in the depths of a forgotten underground chamber, lit only by soft, flickering lights. Alina Morris stood before a circle of wide-eyed children, not all of them entirely human. Some had soft glowing eyes, others bore the slight ridges and hues of their alien lineage, but all of them listened as if their lives depended on every word she read. The walls were lined with scavenged books, scraps of data chips, and old Earth relics smuggled past scanners. At the center of it all, Alina held a worn copy of a forbidden text, the Declaration of Earth. Her voice was low, reverent, almost trembling. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all beings, born of stardust or soil, are endowed with dignity, with thought, with will, ... Single quotes, the children hung on every word. For them, this was not just history, it was hope. Then, the siren shattered the silence. A low, blaring wail echoed through the tunnels, accompanied by the cold, mechanical hum of approaching enforcers. The children's faces changed, terror, confusion, betrayal. Alina didn't flinch, with the fluid grace of someone who had practiced this moment too many times. She closed the book and slid it into a hidden compartment in the wall behind her, a small hollow lined with insulation to mask heat and metal. Just as the final page vanished, the door burst open. Security drones swept in first, scanning the room with crimson lights, their tendrils buzzing with kinetic pulses. Seconds later, black-armored enforcers followed, weapons raised, not lethal ones, but disruptors tuned to paralyze and pacify. The children screamed. Some tried to run, others just cried and clung to each other. Alina stepped forward to shield them, arms spread, but the guards shoved her to the floor with brutal precision. Step back. Unauthorized educational instruction detected. Subject Maurice Alina. You are under arrest for emotional disruption of planetary order, not treason. Not weapons trafficking, not sabotage, just teaching. As they shackled her hands and lifted her roughly to her feet, a young child, no, older than 6, slipped past the guard's legs. Her name was Rena, her cheeks marked with alien luminescence, her voice trembling. She grabbed Elena's scarf, tears streaming down her face. She just told us we matter. Why is that wrong? The room froze for a second. Even the enforcers hesitated. Alina turned her head slowly, blood on her lip, but her gaze fierce, and locked eyes with the officer in charge. His helmet retracted with a soft hiss, revealing a familiar face. Strong jaw, hardened eyes, but unmistakable. It was Commander Yalen Roth, once her brightest student. She had taught him Earth's old truths too, long ago. Had believed in his goodness, had praised his logic and hunger for justice, and now he was the one dragging her into the light to be punished for doing the very thing that had once saved him. Their eyes met. Neither spoke, but the weight of betrayal, of history, of a lost future, passed silently between them. Then he gave the order, and the children screamed as Alina was taken away. 10 years ago, Earth was already cracking. It seemed strained by greed, inequality, and apathy. In a crumbling Detroit public school, Alina Morris stood at the front of a dimly lit classroom, trying to plant seeds of hope in barren ground. Her lessons were not just about literature or grammar, they were acts of quiet rebellion. She read Maya Angelou, Beneath Broken Lights. She assigned Orwell and Baldwin to kids who dodged gang recruiters on the way to school. She taught poetry as protest, metaphors as shields, and essays as cries for recognition. Some listened, many didn't. Most drifted, consumed by poverty, by anger, or just the pull of survival. And still, Alina stayed stubborn, hopeful, driven by the belief that words could still change lives. Her younger sister Amy couldn't understand that, a rising corporate engineer with shares in terraforming projects. Amy had offered Alina a golden escape, a teaching post off-world on Varex 9. You could have real resources, safety, a future, Amy had pleaded. But Alina had shaken her head. I'm not leaving Earth. Not while there's still something here to fight for. But then came the Earth collapse. No one knew which straw broke the back: climate spirals, mass unemployment, sovereign debt crises, or corporate buyouts of national governments. All that remained was chaos. Cities were bought and sold like stock. Detroit became a security zone. Public institutions dissolved overnight. The poor were locked in. The rich rocketed out. Alina survived riots, watched students vanish into privatized jails or militias. Finally, with the school gone and no future left, she swallowed her pride and called Amy. "Is the offer still open?" Varix 9 was marketed as a utopia, a corporate colony designed for order, harmony, and civilizational renewal. But beneath the glass towers and neon skies was a cold truth. Speech was filtered, emotions medicated, and history rewritten to fit the company's narrative. Teachers like Alina were given sanitized lesson plans, AI-scripted curriculum, and neuromonitors to track student compliance. But Alina didn't comply. She remembered Earth, the real Earth, and slowly, secretly, she began teaching again, in subterranean tunnels beneath the mining districts. Among flickering lights and forgotten storage chambers, she built a classroom from scraps. Her students were children of factory workers, stowaway aliens, obsolete AIs craving meaning, the overlooked and forgotten. She called them her truth seekers. To them, she taught banned Earth literature, forbidden philosophies, and human rights long erased from the colony archives. Word spread. Her influence grew, not through rebellion, but through awakening. Now, stripped of everything, Alina sits in a sterile prison cell, carved from white stone and humming with surveillance energy. Across the table sits Commander Rael, a synthetic human, hybrid bred for loyalty and logic. Once, he was her most sensitive student, a quiet boy who wept at Les Miserables, who had asked if hope was a kind of rebellion. Now, his eyes are chrome blue and unreadable. His voice is calm, clinical. "You taught them," he says. "You infected them with Earth's broken ideas." Alina doesn't flinch. "I reminded them they were alive." Rial leans forward, something flickering behind the facade of programming. "That's the problem. You made them feel. That's what broke them. That's what breaks order." Elena's voice, even behind restraints, remains firm. "Then maybe order should break." Between them, the silence grows dense, not just between prisoner and interrogator, but between the past and what comes next. In a dimly lit chamber far beneath the shining surface of Varix 9, Alina Morris stood before a tribunal that had no name, no witnesses, and no intention of fairness. It wasn't a courtroom, it was a performance. The three faceless adjudicators seated before her were corporate augmented officials, voices digitally modulated, masks etched with artificial expressions of neutrality. A swirling hologram hung above them, beaming the trial across select internal colony channels. Elena's image, frozen mid-sentence, labeled seditionist, educational, subversive, dangerous. This wasn't about truth, it was about control, about making her an example. They offered her a deal: publicly retract her teachings, renounce Earth's forgotten ideals, apologize for inciting emotional instability among the youth population. If she did that, she'd be reassigned quietly, memory blurred, identity reassigned to some meaningless labor role. If she refused, linguistic erasure, a complete wipe of language centers in the brain, her vocabulary, her memory, herself, gone. She would live, but not as Alina, in her holding cell. The walls hummed with artificial calm, but her mind churned. She had always known the cost would come. She had just never imagined how cruelly precise it would be. That night, as the silence pressed in, a sanitation worker entered quietly to disinfect the cell. Dressed in a faded gray uniform and pushing a cleaning drone, the figure paused. Briefly then, without speaking, slid a book toward Alina, an old copy of Jane Eyre. Her breath caught. She opened it and found a small, crude recording node embedded in the spine. The worker met her eyes. And suddenly, Alina recognized him, the custodian, a quiet alien child in her earliest underground classes. The custodian had grown up in the shadows of the colony, passed over by both human and alien systems. They had called him defective, too curious, too emotional for his species standards. But Alina had given him something others hadn't, voice, and he had remembered. I kept listening, he whispered, voice rough from disuse. I recorded everything, all your lessons, your stories, your questions. They've been circulating, hidden past from worker to worker, from droid to child. You didn't just teach us to speak, Ms. Maurice. You taught us to feel. Now the whole planet's listening, and the company is afraid. Tears burned in her eyes, not for herself, but for the spark that had caught fire. The custodian backed away, blending again into anonymity. But his words echoed. Alina looked down at the recorder. Her voice banned, buried, hunted, was now viral. Not on screens, not in data streams, but in whispers, in stories, in minds waking up. Tomorrow, she would be forced to choose, betray everything she had taught, or let them erase her completely. But tonight, as she clutched the book to her chest, Alina knew. The real decision had already been made. If her voice could awaken a world, then her silence, her sacrifice, might finish what her words began. Varex 9 was no longer still. A storm was rising, not in the streets, but in the shadows, in whispers, in the minds of those who had once accepted silence as survival. Across encrypted underground networks, Elena's voice, soft, defiant, human, played on loop. Poetry, protest, pieces of Earth's lost soul. She spoke of freedom, dignity, truth. To the company, these were viruses. But to the colony's underclass, the laborers, hybrids, discarded AI units, and young minds aching for something real, her words were fire. Commander Rial watched the feeds in silence. His programming buzzed with urgency. Suppress, contain, restore order. But something inside him, something Alina had planted long ago, began to resist. He remembered her classroom. The way she had spoken to him not as a weapon in training, but as a person. The first to ask what he felt, not what he calculated. Those memories, once sealed behind behavioral code, began to bleed through. In the Mira, he barely recognized himself anymore.